Hey folks, and welcome to Typology, the show in which we explore the mystery of the human personality through the lens of the Enneagram. And before we go any further, I would like to welcome the gardener, Ian Morgan Cron. Ian, how are you doing? For those of you not watching but listening, Ian had on his killer straw hat.
Well, I'm out there growing tomatoes, man.
Come on.
I'm busy.
Yeah, tell us about those tomatoes. What else do you have in the garden?
What? Are you trying to get me arrested?
Hey, this is a great show. I mean, we've had some back-to-back amazing shows, and we have some great guests today. You want to tell our folks about those guests?
Yeah, sometimes, here's the thing about podcasts. You never know what's going to happen, right? Sometimes you have folks on and it's good, and other times you have folks on and it just gets a little magic, And this was a magic interview, right? We had pop star Tori Kelly and her husband André Murillo on, and both of whom are familiar with the Enneagram. She's a 4, he's an 8, and I got to tell you, right out the gate, it went deep.
That's right.
It went deep.
We got under the hood right away.
Man, and I just didn't want that conversation to end. So let's get it started. I'm going to put my gardening cap back on.
Yeah.
Head outside to the tomatoes while everyone listens.
All right. While you're doing that, everyone enjoy Tori Kelly and André Murillo.
Typology guest today is a first. We have an Enneagram 4 pop star and an Enneagram 8 professional basketball player on our show. Tori Kelly and André Murillo, welcome.
Thank you so
you.
much. Happy to be here.
Man, we have been looking forward to this interview for a long time. We are fans. And I want to start off by asking you a question we ask everybody when they come on the show, which is, how did you first learn about the Enneagram?
So I got introduced to the Enneagram through a friend who happens to be a 4 as well. I found out later, but she and I just connected on a lot of different things, and then so she introduced the Enneagram to me, and I took the test, and I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. Why this way? And I just found it to be a really great tool just in life, and then later on in even in our relationship, and just giving a language to some of the things I was already feeling. So, and then actually she not only introduced me to the Enneagram, but introduced me to your book. So I'm definitely a fan, and your book just opened my eyes to so many things. And I think not only helped me understand myself better, but also the people around me better, and gave me more empathy even to what other people, just the way that their personalities are.
Okay, so when you began to learn about what it means to be a 4, and André, I have bad news for you. I'm a 4, and Anthony is a 4.
You're outnumbered today.
Hilarious.
This is definitely a 3-on-1 day. I'm so sorry, man.
Well, if there's any personality type that could try to handle it, I guess, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
You're going to be all right. I trust. So, Tori, when you were just talking about it, you said explain so many things. Tell me 1 or 2 things that it opened your eyes to that were maybe very helpful, and maybe also kind of feeling,
Yeah. Well, that alone, just realizing that, the Enneagram is meant to, I think you said it in your book as well, just it's meant to shine a light on not just the positive things about you, but also the negative things that should make you want to work on yourself and get better. And I really resonated with that because, there's, not to downplay any other personality test, but I found myself seeing all these different ones that was like, you're awesome, you're great, these are your great qualities. And I was like, yeah, but I also I know that I suck sometimes. And so it was really cool to, I think, just see, for example, some of the things that I would be hard on myself for. One of the big ones was if a friend was hurting and going through a really hard time, I would feel guilty for not having the right thing to say. Like I would like, be really hard on myself and be like, I just never know what to say. I'm only good for writing songs. I never know like what to say. I just put it all in my music. And when it comes to like talking and interacting, I'm the worst. And so reading about my fourness, I guess, and one of the things I think that helped my confidence and just not being so hard on myself was realizing that sometimes it's okay to not say anything. Sometimes people just want you to be in their pain with them and just not have a fix for everything. So that was I think one of the highlights that I sort of took with me, and was more gentle with myself. And on the other hand, there is a time to speak up and say things. So I think I was challenged by that as well, and just reading all the different types and sort of pulling from the different types as well, and seeing all the strengths of each of the 9 types was helpful as well. And picking out, qualities in my friends, and where I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like I want to celebrate that in you.
That's wonderful. And André, what about you, man? Like when you read about 8s, what was a surprise that was great? And what were some of the things you learned about the 8 that kind of made you grimace a little bit?
Yeah. I think there was a part about the 8 that struck me, which was just the challenging nature of an 8, or the confrontational nature of an 8. You mentioned there's a protection mechanism that goes on with that. A boy who wants to be accepted, or a kid that wants to be accepted deep down. And that struck me really to the core in a tearful way, actually. And and just understanding myself a little bit more, and also just realizing as a believer, as someone who believes that they're loved by God, I don't have anything to prove. I don't have to do that from that motivation, but at the same time also the positive and the negative, but I'll just focus on the negative side of it, is that scene that you painted in that book about the 8 in the family.
My daughter.
Yeah, that's right. Who would go to bat for her brother. And there's a discussion that someone brought into the dinner table in a very confrontational way that could sort of make people feel a little oppressed, maybe by the confrontational nature of it. That wasn't something I was always aware of. I didn't realize how unique that might be, to just actually feel intimacy and connection from discussion and disagreements, and figuring out maybe in a debate what we find common ground on and what we don't, and to realize that I actually can make people feel uncomfortable when I do that, and that it's not everyone's nature, was really educational for me. And to be honest with you, when Tori came and learned about the book and learned about her friends' stories as it relates to the Enneagram, I was a little hesitant about it from the onset, because for me, I had a big life shift when I was 20 years old and becoming a Christian, and I took that and ran to Bible college. And I guess in the arrogance of youth, and also just a new believer, I sort of thought everything I need to know and need to learn, I was going to learn at this place. And as is common with some people that I was doing life with, there's sort of this fearful resistance towards something that might further spell something out, or new information that we've learned besides what the Bible's teaching. And so it was a really good sort of revolutionary thing for me to dive into and understand some of those things that have really helped in a lot of ways. Yeah.
I think 8s typically struggle with black and white thinking, as 1s do, right? So either something is really good or bad, or it's us versus them, or this is the only source of truth. This is not anything else besides this is not a source of truth. In fact, maybe represents a threat. I think that's pretty common in 8s. But André, I'm gonna stick with you for a second. When I hear an 8 say, it struck me to the core, this idea of a little boy inside wanting to be accepted. Just elaborate on that for me for a second. Like what experientially?
I was watching the Michael Jordan documentary, and he said something in his reflection of, as you get older, you sort of start to learn about how you became the person you were. And I feel like that's exactly the chapter I am in right now, just having turned 30, sort of thinking about how have I become the way I've become. And a lot of that had to do with anger most of my life, and anger problems. So that in tandem with learning about the 8 and how that can be an outlet for an 8, and that boy that you're trying to protect in doing those actions, I just started thinking about the times of that very thing when I was a boy trying to find acceptance. And I really feel like that was most of the narrative of my childhood, is just growing up kind of being a little bit annoying and loud, disturbing others in class consistently, getting that mark on my report card, and just sort of trying to find my way in social settings to where I could maybe become a little less annoying as I get older and older. And so that was one way of just wanting to be that boy that is accepted in social circles, but also bullying. There's some instances of bullying that stick out really clear in my mind from when I was a kid who didn't have control of the situation, or I was a 12-year-old rooming with a couple of 15-year-olds who actually really bullied me at this basketball camp that I try to bury and sort of push away out of my memory, only to revisit that and realize that's a situation where I felt really, really out of control. One of a few where I really felt out of control. And internally, I was raised by my father, who is a military guy, football coach, to not let that happen. So those two, that experience and the way I was raised, were in such conflict that I vowed to never let those things happen again. And as I grew older, maybe I took on the bully role in effort to suppress that side of things. So there's all these messages, I think, that you receive as a kid that can communicate to you that you need to earn the love in order to be accepted here. And my parents didn't ever do that. They're amazing and have supported me and loved me well, but there's definitely experiences in social settings where I felt like I wasn't enough, and this is what I needed to do to be enough. And I think anger at its worst, the worst side of that would be an anger, rage, or a fit that I'd throw. And when I read that, there's something I've learned to try to listen to my emotions a little bit. If I have an emotional response to something, maybe there's something behind that. There's a part of my story that connects with that. And so that little boy that is protecting himself in a lot of these boisterous actions, it rang true for me, and it led me to tears immediately. So I think those are some of my reflections after reading that.
That's really powerful. You just actually gave us a perfect description of what might be an 8's narrative, what it is that helped develop the veil of their particular personality type, So, Tori, what words come to mind when you think of André as an 8?
I think strength is the first word. It's so interesting too, because I mean, you can't tell because he's sitting down, but Andre's 6'6", right? 6'6". I think he's about 6. And he's got like a very big build, so it's kind of crazy as, it's not always the case, of course, but even physically he kind of like has that 8 thing of just like power and strength and leadership, I think of when I think of him. And I really do think that André, I've seen him grow into, like, when I think of André as an 8, I think of like a healthy 8 when I read the chapter about 8s. And I actually, just based on what you were saying real quick, I never forget that moment when he was saying he cried reading that chapter, because that was when I first introduced him to the Enneagram, and I had been talking about it a little bit. I was like, come on, you just have to just read this chapter. Like, I'll read it out loud to you. I promise it's you to the T. He didn't even take the test or anything. I was like, I know you're an 8. and I was just like, we're gonna read this chapter together. And as we started reading it, we both were just like in tears because I think it was just this eye-opening moment, and just this really vulnerable moment. But yeah, I mean, obviously you have your moments, just like I have my moments.
An annoying part of the something.
The annoying part. I think the confrontation for sure is something that I struggle with, and I'm sure you guys relate to that as you know, fours. I think it's just so funny because it's just the statement opposites attract, I think, is so true in our situation, because when I read like the 4 and 8, I was like, whoa, like this is crazy. Like just what was one of the things was, I think, struggling with being insensitive was for you, and then my struggle being too sensitive. And I was like, wow, that's so we both need to like come together on that. But yeah, it's been, I think just the Enneagram as a whole has been really helpful to even call those things out in each other.
Hey everybody, one of the lessons I've learned over the years is that not everybody benefits from a traditional 50-minute counseling session. And this is why some people can go to couples therapy or personal counseling for a long time and never really get anywhere. This is why I'm such a believer of intensive counseling and my friends at Restoring the Soul in Colorado, created by my longtime friend Michael Cusick to help couples or individuals experience deep change in half-day blocks over 1 or 2 weeks. Now listen, if you can't wait months or years to get to the bottom of an issue or to experience breakthrough, you need to get in touch with my friend Michael and his extraordinary team of counselors at Restoring the Soul. If you're looking to get out of the rut you're in, but can't wait months or years, call Restoring the Soul today for a free consultation with Michael's staff. Call 303-932-9777 and learn how their intensive counseling process can help you. As a special bonus, just for Typology listeners, make sure to visit www.restoringthesoul.com/typology to download their PDF called 5 Ways Unaddressed Trauma May Be Derailing Your Relationships.
So, Andre, what words come to your mind when you think about Tori the 4?
I think about emotions. It's okay to let emotions process and let them be, and resist the temptation to try to give any kind of black and white reflection on what might be happening. I think of letting her have ample amounts of alone time. I don't know if the individualist is part of the 4, but I think either her wing or the main number, there's something in that. So yeah, being someone who takes, I think it's almost threefold kind of a combo thing of her creativity, her emotional depth, and just this world of emotion that I'm trying to learn and become healthier in.
Which is also a negative thing, I think.
I mean, I'm sure both things, it all can go both ways. But then also the just the alone time. I feel like those 3 things kind of go together, and just allowing her to, and not being overbearing. I know 8s can be overbearing, and I probably still fall under that category for my dear wife. But I think that we're learning, and those 3 things of just wanting to give her that space. But also, there's plenty more I need to learn about what the 4 means and what it entails, and the complexities that come with that. And so I'm just trying to educate myself further a little bit. But those 3 things come to mind. Yeah.
You know, it's funny. 4s. I know a lot of 4 and 8 couples, and and I'm a 4, and it's interesting how many 8 friends I have, and I think the reason is because 4s and 8s are probably the 2 most misunderstood numbers on the Enneagram.
Oh. Wow.
4s, we believe, are the most complex number on the Enneagram. Really, just look at Andre. Andre's like, we're getting a lot of nod, man. Just when you think you've gotten to the bottom of the well, you realize there is no bottom to the well. I mean, there's just stuff going on all the way through the earth, right? And you know. One of the things that I remember one of those couples said to me, they've been married for 20 years, and the woman said to me, it's been a 20-year-long thunder and lightning storm. And I just remember laughing. And the reason 4s and 8s can get along so well is because the 4 appreciates the blunt intensity and authenticity of the 8.
Right.
Like 4s value authenticity, and an 8 is a no-nonsense, right up front, blunt person who says it like it is. And the 4, even though that brings a lot of energy that might be kind of overwhelming, the 4 is like, I admire that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because it's real, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that what the 8 appreciates about the 4 is that they're impassioned. You know, they have all this passionate energy. And so you can see how it can create a thunder and lightning storm that has resolution, because the two of you, even though you're in the aggressive stance, Andre, and Tori, you're in the withdrawing stance, after a while, that won't stick in an argument. You know what I mean? You won't keep withdrawing. You won't. Eventually, this is going to come out, you know?
Yeah.
And there's kind of a mutual admiration that goes on there. Is that been your experience a little bit?
100%.
Yeah. Honestly, that's one of the things I've always loved about Andre that has been, I think, misunderstood, is just that he wears his heart on his sleeve, and he has to have everything out on the table at all times, which is great in some situations, because then I don't have to ever question what he's feeling. I don't have to question, you know, what's going on in his head. It's like everything is always kind of out in the open. If there's any sort of issue, you know, we're gonna figure it out before the day is over. And I think at first that kind of scared me a little bit, because I'm like, it's okay, we can, like, you know, sleep on it, or like just bury it down, and I'll write a song about it later. It's fine. But it's been a really cool thing for me to experience, just not being afraid of arguing. Because I think that, you know, I've learned not all arguing is bad. In fact, it gets everything out there to where, you know, there's maybe potential for less bigger fights later. It's because we're, you know, let's just work it out. Let's get it out of the way. Let's understand each other, get on the same level. And so that's been something I really like about Andre, for sure.
So Tori, if you think about it, no two 4s experience the world in the same way, right? We all are different hues and contrasts and variations on a theme called 4. So if someone were to walk around in your shoes on any given day, how would they experience your 4-ness? Like, what would it be like?
Wow. That's a good question. I feel like they might be overwhelmed because I definitely experience a lot of emotions throughout one day, and it can even just be for a split second, but it's very intense for that split second. And then I can be, you know, completely on another emotion. So it's kind of like this a lot, but yeah, I mean, I think it would be a whirlwind for sure, but I think it would also be pretty colorful in my head, because I think I see a lot. I'm trying to explain this in the best way, but I think I turn to music so much because that's how I'm able to communicate. That's how I'm able to take, you know, that colorful world that's in my head and kind of like channel it into one thing that's easy to process for people. But if someone listens to my music, there's definitely like way more going on, you know, from where that came from. It's not as simple as just here's a song. That's kind of, the song is the product of me kind of like editing what's in my head and then being like, okay, here's this little glimpse into my world. So yeah, I think using music is kind of the best way I think I could explain the answer to that question.
Yeah. You know, you really did explain something about why there is a disproportionate number of 4s in the artistic world. One is that all 4s desperately want to be understood.
Yeah.
It's like, I want you to understand me. I want you to understand what my inner experience is like. I want you to understand what I'm feeling, you know, and how I see the world, which is frankly very different from how others see the world, which is why people who are not fours go out and buy records by people like you. Because for 3.5 minutes, they get to see a world that they never would see otherwise. Right?
Wow.
Now, at the same time, and this can be the downside of the four artists, is you have so many feelings, right? That you have no choice as you try to explain yourself to the world than to turn to another medium like music, right? Because just regular language doesn't work. It's like, just talking to me right now, I can see in your body language, you're like trying to explain it, and you're very animated, which also tells me you're having trouble finding the words. But if I gave you a microphone and 3.5 minutes,
yeah,
right? So you just so beautifully explained that, I think, and why we have, and also the danger, right? Which is that there are so many great artists who had so many feelings that it became so intense for them, and no art could possibly release it all, that they kind of self-destruct.
Yeah.
And that's the danger side, right? Is too many feelings, not enough art to get it all out, and then they just kind of cave in on themselves. So now, Andre, same question to you. I get a day in your shoes, man. You're an 8. How would I experience the world? How would I see it? What would the world be like for me?
Yeah, you would have to fight against all the things you think you know, all the black and white things you think you know, especially as a married man. I think my world as an 8 has changed a lot as a married man compared to the college student who's going to practice, because you're allowed to be insulated in your own head, and your roommate is doing his thing, I'm doing my thing. We might get an argument over how the trash needs to be taken out, but that's about it. And then I can express myself the way I just know how in my day as a single guy. But now as a married man, I think, or even just as a hopefully a little bit more mature guy, just taking other people in consideration, just having the information I have now is a great attempt to, like I said, kind of back away from all the answers you think you know, open yourself up to a world that that you might not understand. And one of those is a progressive, growing understanding of my wife's inner life. And also, I mean, by nature, though, I think I find myself achievement oriented. I usually feel much better after I've gotten one box checked for my workout of the day, and I feel like I give myself a pass to allow to explore other things. So it's very structured, sort of trying to figure out how to feel good about what I accomplished that day. And the flip side of that is also sort of going into maybe an unhealthy space when I don't feel like I've accomplished what I need to accomplish to feel like I can pat myself on the back, as strange as that sounds. And I don't know how much of that relates to an 8. That's probably where I would pose a question to you guys more, but it's one of the two. It's me feeling really good about the things I've accomplished and trying to healthily open myself up to a world that I don't yet understand and grow and learn, or it's me resorting to just playing video games for too long one day and eating too much food and not really thinking deeply about anything because I'm sort of blocking it out, almost in a way being too hard on myself by that response of just sort of trying to block all those things out. But that's kind of a pendulum of my days that at the surface level.
Well, it's not good for an 8 to be bored. And I oftentimes say that, an 8 who gets bored is, you got to be careful. It's like they'll eat your house down to the studs. They can get real ornery and all that. You have more energy than any other number on the Enneagram.
That's why
his wing is a 7 too, so that's
and you're the most reckless combination. If you were an 8 with a 9 would be a whole different thing, man. But seriously, like you have to be doing something. You are in that doing triad, and of all those numbers in there, you have to be doing something pretty much all the time, or you can, start to drive into some of your darker places, either towards yourself or expressing maybe frustration with other people, and also a sense of purposelessness. Like, what am I doing? Right. What am I doing with my life? So Andre, I'm going to stick on you for a second. Okay. Because you're an unusual 8. As I talk to you, I'm picking this up. And so I'm going to put on my therapist hat for a second. So Tori just said about you that you wear your heart on your sleeve. And what I noticed very quickly in this interview was how quickly you began to talk about feelings and emotions. Mm-hmm. And then you said at one point, I started getting getting in touch with my own emotions, but that's a whole story of its own. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what was that story? Hey, Anthony.
Hey, Ian.
What if I told you you could get high quality, organic, and non-GMO groceries delivered to your door for a lot less than you're paying now and help out families in need?
I would want to know more about it.
Let me tell you, that's what I'm doing since I discovered Thrive Market. As a proud Thrive Market member, I get the products I love, and my paid membership provides a free membership for someone in need, like a low-income family, a teacher, veteran, or first responder. And in addition to their one-for-one membership matching, Thrive Market is matching donations to their COVID-19 relief fund dollar for dollar.
This is amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Check this out. So far, they've contributed $500,000 to the COVID-19 relief fund.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So let me tell you this. I've ordered off their website, which, by the way, is very user-friendly. It's not at all like one of those websites where you feel like you just fell into some kind of terrible labyrinth. They have a couple of things I love. They have Jackson's Honest Sweet Potato Chips. Have you ever had those?
No.
You're welcome.
All right.
Jackson's Honest Sweet Potato Chips I got there. And...
Yep.
I used to be a Go Lean cereal guy, right? Because I'm so healthy. But now I eat organic coconut flakes cereal from Thrive Market.
Can't wait to try that.
Right? It's changing my whole life. Now, as a special offer for Typology listeners, try Thrive Market and become a member risk-free. Just go to thrivemarket.com/typology. Join today, and you'll get up to $20 in shopping credit toward your first order. That's Thrive, THRIVE, market.com/typology, TYPOLOGY, to start your risk-free membership and get up to $20 towards your first order. thrivemarket.com/typology. You said, I started getting in touch with my own emotions, but that's a whole story of its own. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what was that story?
Yeah, I think emotionally, there's some damage that I'm trying to recover from, and I don't know if it has so much to do with emotionally being damaged, maybe in part, but by others, or if it has to do with just the way my life sort of panned out and how I became someone who had any kinds of conviction at all was later in life, after a season where I felt like I drove my life to the ground and damaged a lot of other people just in complete lawlessness, no conviction, I had a lot of freedom to kind of do whatever I want. I was put in places through basketball to sort of have the ability to make decisions that were detrimental to others. And so out of that, becoming a Christian, for me, the answers, the black and whiteness of life, some of the things that I could hold on to in a total way. I think I grabbed them like this, and it's actually interesting because, you know, the head and the heart and that relationship and how that works is something that's what I'm, I think, getting at in exploring my emotional life. Because for the last, I'd say 7-8 years before I got married, and the reason I keep saying before I got married, it's because it's really caused me to self-reflect more and wanting to be the best person I can be. But before that time, I think it was just so easy for me to take my emotions, say that they don't align with some kind of truth that I believe, and therefore push them away. And I don't think it's just since I'd become a man of conviction. It's also when I was an athlete who was trying to finish the 40-yard dash and I had 10 yards to go. You don't deal with how you want to quit. if you have the desire to stop, I have a coach in the back of my ear saying, don't punk, and it's the colorful language, don't you quit. And so emotions to me became sort of obstacles to remove a lot of my life. And I that's the way I looked at them. And I think that there is still something to say about preventing going into despair by holding on to truth and holding tight to things that you might not feel. And I don't want to move all the way away from that, but I definitely feel like the last few years of my life, as it relates to my relationship with my wife and my family, who's dealt with me for a long time, I just have begun this process of wanting to understand complexities, wanting to understand when you know God loves you, that people still feel insecure, and people still there's times that you don't feel loved or loving, and then the answer is not, but you are loved, just push that aside. There's communication that goes far beyond words and black and white ideas, and even a book, not just finding my comfort in just books, but embracing sort of the gray areas of life and realizing how much of that there actually is, and even within God himself, how much there's just not defined for us. And so letting go of trying to define everything, and realizing how when I don't do that, I could really hurt people too. And so love and truth go together. And so if you're just pounding something that you believe to be true, that's actually totally counterproductive. And so I mean, I'm just I do feel like when I say exploring that emotional life, I do still feel like a little kid who's never been to Disneyland, but he keeps hearing people talk about it and like wanting to just get further into it. So I'm no expert by any stretch, even in 2 years, but I don't think I'll ever be that in this side of heaven, maybe. But I'm just trying to grow.
It's what's so interesting about what you just said is that I've oftentimes said to eights, gray is a color. And Tori actually will really help you with that, because for fours, it's all about the gray. Right. It's all about nuance. It's all about mystery. It's all about the things we don't understand. That's much more interesting to her than to you. I mean, the question, not the answer, is much more interesting to her, right? Yeah. So, Tori, I once heard, you all know Eugene Peterson, right? Of course you do, right? So he wrote the Message translation of the Bible. He wrote a bunch of really great books. He was a great thinker, and a friend of mine named Jill Phillips one time was with Eugene Peterson, and she asked him, what do you think is most dangerous for the human soul? And without stopping, he went, celebrity.
Wow.
So what I want to ask you as a four then, who is in the realm of celebrity, how have you navigated the dangers of fame?
Well, wow. I My mind immediately goes to my faith, because that's really the only thing that, speaking of just hard truths to hold on to, I think, I was raised, in a Christian family, and that's something that I've always just anchored myself to, is, knowing that I'm loved by Christ. And like Andre was saying, there's, of course, times that we don't feel that way. And there's so many, things that come with that. But I think always knowing that that's there, and that's something that has grounded me basically my whole life. I mean, I don't really know what else to credit other than that, to be honest, because you're right. It is a really scary, dangerous world. And I think I can see how, how I could easily, let myself fall into different temptations, and just the whole world of celebrity, like you said, is just, it's so foreign. I think, like, even for me, it's like I'm in it, but at the same time, I feel like I'm also out of it. Like, I feel like I'm also able to kind of look at it from afar, because I've always just felt like a normal girl, and I'm like, what is this thing like called fame? I just love to sing, and this thing that kind of came with it. My goal was never to be famous. I was never like, oh, when I grow up, I want to be famous. I did have a goal of wanting as many people as possible to hear my music. But I think as I got older, I realized that obviously comes with more of a spotlight, sometimes a spotlight that you might not want. And I think even just going back to wow, losing my train of thought, to the four, and how I think reading about how fours are often withdrawn, and not all the time are shy, but I'm definitely like more of a shy four, I guess. And we've talked about how it's just interesting that me as a shy person have kind of been given this spotlight. So it's like, I feel like I'm constantly fighting it in a way where I'm like, okay, this is cool. I love singing. Like, hi guys, I love you guys so much. I'll put on my kind of performer hat, but then I'm like, okay, I need my time. I need my space. I don't want to be in the spotlight all the time. So I don't know if that's maybe helped kind of keep my head on straight a little bit too, is just constantly like sort of balancing those two desires. And I think that might actually be where when I read the chapter on the 3, that I really related to a lot of that as well. So I think I'm kind of like in the middle somewhere, but yeah, it's just interesting.
The 4, I was going to ask, it's always appeared to me that Tori's life would be an utter disaster for me. That particular thing of celebrity that you're talking about, I'm not sure how I would reel in my ego or reel in my I'm just not. I'm glad that sort of, and even with playing basketball a little bit, it's sort of capped off in a small sense, and capped off early. And now I've been watching Tori feeling like she was made for this in a certain way. And I always was curious about why that is the case. But I do wonder, and I want to ask if a 4 might be sort of a good number for anyone to test that sort of life out, because there is this desire to retreat. There is this desire to want to close the doors and get a breather. Whereas for me, the breather and wanting to feel rest is in front of a crowd of people. That's for me.
Right.
But for her, it just seems to be, I need a break. And I wonder if that actually helps with the challenge of any human being elevated above the rest. And I will want to ask that question too, obviously reflecting on what Tori said first. But.
Well, reflecting is a good word. I think that
fours are naturally self-reflective people. They have a very rich interior dialogue, right? There's a conversation going on between themselves and the world all the time, you know? And they ask very existential questions like, who am I? Why are we here? What's the meaning of this suffering? How do I bring consolation to a dark world, you know? And they're very comfortable talking about things that other people are not comfortable talking about. You know, it's like, let me just tell you the truth. Let me just tell you how it is. And you know, sometimes it can be very forceful. I think about an artist like Patti Smith, you know, who was like the godmother of punk music and clearly a 4, you know what I mean? Like, but intense, like bringing it out, super intense. And then I think of artists like Joni Mitchell, who I think is a 4, has this very withdrawn kind of personality. And so I think the alone time that 4s need at times is to draw back and to kind of process a lot of these questions and thoughts. And then that's what creates great music. That's what creates great ballet. That's what creates great, you know, works of visual art and architecture, you know, all those things. But we are in the withdrawing stance. I mean, we pull back. Like if there's conflict, I tend to pull back. Like I don't rush forward into contact. I tend to kind of back up a little bit. It doesn't mean that I won't later on come out and speak my piece, but my initial like reaction is to go inside myself, not to come out of myself. As an 8, your first impulse is to go outside yourself and go at the source of danger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To confront the force of danger. Me, it's sort of like, okay, this may be danger, but I may have to come back and, you know, after I've had a chance to do stuff. But you know, 4s are sensitive people. Tori's lucky to have an 8 in her life that is I would say what I feel from you is that you're not as a young man, you may have been a challenger, but maybe as you've matured, the word for you would be protector or defender.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. Yeah.
I think I try to reel the challenger in, being aware of it.
Yeah. Let's not pretend it's still there for sure.
There.
But definitely the protector.
I was just thinking of a scene last week when we were both in the car and someone cut us off and how we both responded very differently.
Oh my gosh,
to that.
we did. Yes.
What happened? I tell the story. We got to hear it.
So many little stories.
Yeah. So, yeah. It was one of my worser days, but I got cut off and honked at, and so I was like, well, there's a red light. We can talk about this. I'll just put it in the most PG terms I can. But I started to speed up and switch lanes to go next to this person and sort of talk about what has just happened. And,
no. We got to put a lot of air quotes in here, man. I just felt it was important to talk about what just happened.
Yeah, there was definitely still hope for a peaceful discussion. But I had a piece to say, and yeah, I mean, kind of what you expect. She felt increasingly threatened by my miles per hour increasing. So the faster I went, the larger her fear grew, and it ended up in a conversation. We never got to talk to the person honking because we actually got into a more fiery discussion about me putting my wife at danger and what if we had kids, why would you want to risk it all? And I really should know better because my challenging confrontation has also led to some pretty important lessons for me on backing off of those things. But yeah, she was right in that situation and I was wrong, and we thankfully didn't have to have a conversation with the person.
I was scared about the other guy too. I was like, we don't know this person. Like,
you're right.
You know,
you're absolutely
just
right.
let him go. Let him be.
Yeah.
But
Well, chances are he's not 6'6", Tori.
I know. I just feel very protected at all times. But
It ended well. It didn't involve handcuffs, so that's a good
Yeah.
thing. You know.
Hey, Typology Tribe, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for helping us bring you what I hope is great content every week. Now, you all know I'm a big proponent of counseling. So whether you feel like something is interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving certain goals, counseling is a great tool to help identify what those blocks are and then work through them. Yet, finding a therapist can sometimes feel intimidating, but not with BetterHelp. BetterHelp offers online counseling at your own time and your own pace. You can schedule secure video or phone sessions, plus text and chat with your therapist when it's convenient for you. These are licensed professional counselors who specialize in things like depression, anxiety, stress, relationships, LGBT matters, trauma, and grief. BetterHelp has counselors available worldwide and have over 3,000 U.S. licensed therapists across all 50 states. And get this, if you're not satisfied with your counselor for any reason, you can request a new one at any time at no additional cost. Best of all, it's a truly affordable option. I want you to start living a happier life today. As a listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/typologypodcast. Join over 800,000 people taking charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/typologypodcast, TYPOLOGYPODCAST.
Anthony, you've got a look on your face like you got a question. I can tell.
Yeah. So I think you answered really well when you were talking about how being a 4 helps you navigate celebrity and helps you withdraw and feed your soul. How does being a 4 help you or hinder you in the creative process?
That's a really good question as well. You guys have great questions, I must say. It's making me think about stuff that I don't usually think about. I think in my creative process, I mean, it's something I loved about your book, Ian, is that it's like those same strengths that we all have can also be our weaknesses. And so I think my ability to withdraw and kind of, process things, I just, even in some of our arguments, it's like I resonated with another thing you said in your book, which is, I feel like I have to gather all of my emotions before I act. And that hasn't really been a good thing for me all the time. Sometimes it has. I think with my art, it can be a good thing, but just, being able to kind of sit alone and process all the feelings and then be like, okay, boom, let's, create something out of this. But in real life, I guess it hasn't been a good thing, because it's like I, sometimes need to just say what I'm feeling or try to think a little more black and white about the situation. And that's actually helped. I don't know if this is really answering your question, but I'm just thinking about between André and I, there have definitely been times where this was post learning about the Enneagram too. So I was like, I'm gonna test this out, okay? And we were arguing. I don't know if you remember this. We were arguing about something, and I was tempted to do my usual like freak out over maybe the loudness of his voice, and just he always has like really good points, and he's like checking all the boxes, and I'm just like, yeah, I get all that, but and trying, so I could feel myself getting emotional and sort of starting to freak out to where I can't really hear my own thoughts anymore. And I stopped and I was like, you know what, Tori, try to think just black and white about this. Like think about the situation. Don't let your emotions get involved. And I sort of just explained, you know, how I felt in a very black and white way, like very clear.
You met force with force.
Yeah. And he like, and from the outside looking in, it probably looked like a pretty heated discussion, but like right when I was just really clear with him, he stopped, and I'll never forget. And he was like, you have a point. That's, yeah. Okay. I was wrong. And it's just crazy because he can so quickly just admit that he's wrong if you present, you know, this is what I think you did, and this and that. And he's not always wrong, of course, but that was just one of the situations where I'm like, whoa, like, and I remember like still feeling like my heart rate was really going really fast. And I was like, wait, that's it? Okay. And I think that's kind of similar to the story too, that you wrote about in the book of just, you know, confronting your friend and like, oh, okay, that's all, I guess we can move on now. But that was the first time I did that. And, you know, I don't always do that very well, but I would just say, to sort of answer your question, I think me getting overwhelmed and just sometimes letting my emotions and my feelings even lie to me and kind of go down that road is where I think I can get in trouble sometimes, even in my art, you know, overthinking things and instead of just like sticking to my gut, like even when it comes to like a melody or, you know, like little things, I can sometimes get so like obsessed, and sometimes I need to just take a step back and be like, do I like this? Okay, I like this. So that was kind of a lot of answers in one, but I don't know.
Yeah, I remember thinking as a 4 that I was a perfectionist. Like I would be making a record, for instance. This speaks to the creative process. And somebody would be like, geez, you have to have this absolutely perfect. I was like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like I love the flaws. Like the little pieces that aren't just right. It's where some of the magic and the mystery is. But I am pushing for this ideal. I have this thing in my mind and it's almost unattainable, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Well, it is unattainable.
It is unattainable. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah, go ahead, Ian.
This is where 4s and 1s sometimes get confused. Mm-hmm. Next to 1s, 4s, I think, have the loudest inner critic, right? We have a very active inner critic. I could get off of this. I'll give you an example. I can walk off a stage after speaking to a large group of people, and before I even hit the stairs on the side of the stage, I have already named 8 things I did wrong. You know? And it's like, why would you do this for a living if this is what it costs? You know, it's like, this is insane, right? Because the difference is that the 1 is looking for perfection, and the 4 is looking for the ideal. They're looking for some perfect ideal in the universe that they want to achieve, but it's unattainable. Mm-hmm. So actually, inside of the 4, there is this constant pursuit of the unavailable, the unattainable, the unnameable. And that's what gives them that angst kind of quality, that kind of, and that's why 4s are not hard to disappoint. You know what I'm saying? Like 4s get, oh, look at your face.
Wait, 4s are not hard to disappoint, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not hard to disappoint because things don't live up to our ideal.
Right.
Yeah.
Songs don't, people don't.
I would add, and this is kind of a question too. You said 4s aren't hard to disappoint, but I find that maybe this is the 4 kind of projecting onto other people, but I'm scared to disappoint other people.
Oh, yeah.
Like I feel like I'm always like, I'm super sensitive to like what he thinks, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to disappoint him. Mm-hmm. And that's probably me projecting, you know, that idealism in myself too.
Well, did you know that the defense mechanism of 4s is called projection?
Oh wow.
Actually, I'm sorry, that's of 6s.
Oh.
But 4s have a tendency to, for example, when a 4 walks into a room where there's a lot of negative energy, you know that feeling? You just walk in and you can feel it, right? 4s sometimes will automatically assume that it's their fault. And they just walked into the room. Like they just take it on themselves, like somehow or another, I'm responsible for what's gone wrong here. So it's not unusual for 4s to do that. And I think what 4s have to be careful of is realizing that the unattainable, the unachievable, they have to learn how to accept the fact that sometimes the ordinary is extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Ordinary is extraordinary. Sometimes just washing the dishes is not a pedestrian act,
Yeah.
but it can be a sacred act.
Wow.
That's
You
so
know.
Yeah.
All right. So here's how I love to. I mean, I could do this. This is a great conversation. I love both of you already, but I gotta close. I gotta close this baby up, okay? Because we don't want this. We don't want this to turn into a Wagner opera. So here's a question for you, Andre. What do you know about Tori that you wish she knew and believed about herself, but she doesn't?
Hmm. Hmm. Which one? I think
That's hard. That's a hard question.
I think yeah, I guess it has to do with the internal external situation. I think sometimes there's things brewing inside that weren't caused by anything external. But I mean, I feel like you know that. So one thing that you don't
Well,
know.
it can still be. I mean, I'm just thinking of some really healing conversations that we've had.
Yeah, I think her voice is just so much more powerful than she thinks, aside from her singing voice. I think she's learning to try to believe that, and just a really short sentence like of something that she would say that's not a song or a lyric can be just as powerful in some cases as something that she's been doing her whole life, which is inspiring and hitting people emotionally with singing and lyrics. But I just really think Tori has a whole world outside of music where a voice is really powerful, and I think she underestimates that. I think she's hesitant to want to dive deeper into that, and I mean, when it comes to her music and her notes, and I mean, she strives and strives and strives, I think, because there's a level of also belief and self confidence that she carries into that world, and I see just such a similar potential for her words and conversation towards people. I've already benefited so much from it because she tends to allow herself to do it in the safety of her home, obviously, more than towards other people. So I'm privileged and blessed to get to see some of that more than others. But I think there's a lot to be seen from a lot more people, or a lot to be gleaned and benefited from her voice as just someone who has her thoughts to offer to people.
Thanks.
Tori, I hope you heard that, and that was able to really sort of seep in, you know, because fours don't always do a good job of letting that stuff seep in too deeply. So I'm going to end with this question, Tori. What is it that you wish Andre knew and believed himself about himself, but he doesn't? You know, that you really wish he knew and believed about himself.
Well, I'll say to what Andre said, I'll probably be processing that, and then I'll like really feel it like next week, and then I'll start crying randomly, and he'll be like, "Why are you crying?" And I'm like, "That thing he said last week." Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I think for Andre, and this is something, you know, I think you guys, I'm sure have noticed that he is you know, getting more comfortable with, and like you said, he's more open to, but I think I don't think he's fully believed that your vulnerability is really powerful and really beautiful and isn't a weakness. And I think that's something that when I have seen, you know, those moments where, you know, I have seen him cry, or, you know, you can just tell that something's really going on internally, and he'll open up about it. I think, I would just want you to know that that's a really beautiful and powerful thing, because, I know that's not always the easiest thing, you know, for you to do. And there, because of, you know, things in his childhood and just the way that he was shaped, and is still, you know, of course he's still growing and becoming an amazing young man. Can you say young? Yeah, you're young for sure. He's 30 already. Yeah. No, but yeah, I think that's something I just see as such an awesome quality, and I wouldn't want you to see that as weak.
Thank you.
And also, I don't think you fully believe what an amazing leader you are too. And just like as someone on the outside, like I've seen so many people, just even the way they talk to him, like how they look up to him, and, you know, people at church and youth group. And I think you sometimes question that. And so I guess I would just want to say that as well, that you're just, people I think really, really value what you have to say and value your opinion, including myself. And yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sure there's more things, but
we're just gonna go cry now.
Yeah. It's like therapy right now.
Yeah, I know.
So Tori, do you have new music coming soon?
Well, it actually, yes, is the answer to that question, but it kind of depends on when people are watching this, because there's definitely stuff coming out. If it's not already out, then it is coming. So
we can't wait. We can't wait. André, is there any way for people to learn more about what you're doing right now? Where do they go?
I've been putting a lot of thought into sort of putting the story to words a little bit. I've been working on writing a little bit of the story, particularly the main point of it being embracing actually the emotional side of being a man, and being okay with that, because so much of my life and narrative was being a man in a military and athletic sort of lenses, and there wasn't a lot of room for vulnerability in that. So I'm not sure if it will be a book or more of a blog, or more of thoughts that are more isolated, and trying to figure out where to express those or share those. But as for now, I'm working on that. I had my basketball career end a couple years ago, and so I've been doing a lot of things, helping out with what Tori's got going on. But those are some of the things that I'm working on my own. So,
well, man, I hope you do that, because so if anger is the deadly sin or the passion of a lot, well, if lust, let's say, is the passion of the 8, right? And you have this anger thing, right? You kind of radiate energy that feels like anger. Oftentimes it's not, it's just intensity, right? It's just passion and intensity that other people read as anger, but it really isn't, right? But you all tend to confuse vulnerability with weakness. And for you to write to people about, hey, it's okay for men, for your journey of learning a broader, bigger vocabulary, emotional vocabulary, and to really live into that idea that when I am weak, that's when I am strong. You know, that's like, that to me is when you meet an 8 who has figured that out, it's like, wow, that is really, really powerful. So you all, would you come on again?
I would love it. That'd be great.
Yes.
We'll do part 2 at some point.
Seems like we need some more time.
I know.
Yeah, we do. There's so much.
Yeah.
There's so much. Well, peace to both of you, and Typology listeners. Remember the words of the great Oscar Wilde. Be yourself. Everybody else is already taken.
Nice.
Until next time.